So from Amsterdam, I wish you a good afternoon. My name is Lise Heidi Jurgensen. I'm chairman of the Danish-Dutch Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of my colleagues at the Swedish Chamber, the Norwegian Chamber, and the Finnish Chamber of Commerce here in the Netherlands, and on behalf of the 4 Nordic embassies in the Netherlands, on behalf of the Nordic Council, and on behalf of our cooperating partner Mission C, I hereby welcome you to our third and last webinar in our series Nordic Talks Sustainable Fashion 2020. We are especially very honored to have with us today the 3 Nordic ambassadors in the Netherlands and the deputy ambassador from the Norwegian embassy. So a very warm welcome to Ms. Annika Markovic, the Swedish ambassador to the Netherlands. A very warm welcome to Päivi Kaukoranta, the Finnish ambassador to the Netherlands, to Mr. Jens Otto Horslund, the Danish ambassador, and to Ms. Ine Moring, the Norwegian deputy ambassador to the Netherlands. I also welcome our 5 speakers who are representing the 4 Nordic countries and the Netherlands. And of course, I welcome all of you, our more than 300 participants to this last Nordic Talks webinar. In our 2 previous webinars, we spoke about green fashion and whether there is a green future at all for the fashion industry. We then tuned in to the role of us, the consumers, and whether we are able to contribute to a change in the fashion industry in order to make that industry more green and sustainable. Today, in our final webinar in the Nordic Talk series, we focus on raising awareness, and we will share with you various initiatives coming from governmental and international levels. We will do so with our fantastic moderator, Andrea Osak from Mission C. But before I hand over to you, Andrea, I have some practical stuff to share with you, and that is that your camera, please note your camera is off and you are all muted. And if you want to share questions or remarks, please feel free to use the chat box. Enjoy the webinar, and I call on you, Andrea. Are you ready to take over?
Many thanks, Lisa.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. And absolutely, I think we are fully ready to kickstart the 3rd webinar of the Nordic Talk Sustainable Fashion Days. And without further ado, I would actually like to start with Pierre Hubert, who's our keynote speaker for today. And despite the fact that Pierre was the last one in a video that started this webinar, we are going to hear from Pierre as the first one. It's an absolute delight to have him here with us because Pierre is the chairman of the Dutch Sustainable Garment and Textile Agreement, and he has a vast experience within all the different NGOs, also a private sector, combining stakeholder management and negotiating on behalf of all the different initiatives, and so much more under his belt. So Pierre, welcome, and very, very curious to hear about what's going on right now within the sustainable fashion agenda.
Okay, thank you, Andrea, for this very nice introduction. So I hope I won't disappoint you because you put the bar very high. I will talk in 12 minutes and 3 slides on what are the key elements of our sustainability garment and textile agreement in the Netherlands. And if we go to my slides, and I would say, let's go immediately to the 2nd slide, which should come now on the screen. I would like to explain you a bit on the background, a bit of the background. Then a 2nd slide will be about our learnings, and conscious raising will be part of that. And thirdly, I would like to deep dive a little bit on the role of the government in these kind of initiatives. What is important to understand is that like 4 or 5 years ago, the Dutch government did a research with KPMG on the supply chains in the Netherlands, and they did a kind of a risk analysis. What are the relevant supply chains in the Netherlands, and where do we really have social and environmental challenges? And the idea behind it was, once we have identified supply chain with social and environmental challenges, that we would start developing sector agreements. And at this moment, we have some 10 of these sector agreements in the financial sector, food sector, and many others. And one of them And the first one to start was the textile agreement sector. Why was it for me personally also to be very attractive to get involved in these initiatives? Because of the two words that I have mentioned here in the second bullet. Because the fundamental insight behind this initiative and behind this agreement is that if you would like to solve really structural issues in supply chain, you have to do it collectively. Because these systemic issues, and I will come back to these issues later on, you can't solve as an NGO, as a government alone, as a trade union, or as a company, or as a trade association. You have to do it together. So that's a fundamental thinking behind it. And what is very important is that in these agreements, the government, and it depends per agreement what ministry is participating. We have agreements with the Ministry of Economy, Finance, Foreign Affairs, Environment, etc. It really depends. But the government is not only a very important facilitating party, but also a party that really is involved in the implementation and the design of these agreements. And that is a very interesting difference with a lot of multi-stakeholder initiatives worldwide, is where the government is often somebody you talk to or somebody you would like to influence, but in our system they are part of it. In all agreements you find a thorough due diligence process based on the OECD guidelines, and in all agreements there are specific thematic projects defined, like promoting living wage or freedom of association, that are part of these sector agreements. What is the goal? The goal is to have really an impact on identified issues in the supply chain within a period of 3 to 5 years. And they are independently hosted and they're also independently chaired. The chairman of an initiative is selected by all parties and appointed by the SER. And for those of you who are not very familiar with the Netherlands, the SER is the most important advisory council of the Dutch government. And they advise the government on pension, reforms of the labor market, etc. It's a tripartite advisory council with trade unions, employers, and also Crown members nominated by the Crown. So they are the independent members. The funding of these agreements, they come from the government. Most of it is from the government. Then the SER, so the social parties also have decided to contribute. And in almost all agreements, the sector also has a very small or big contribution. That depends on the financial possibilities of the sector. Next slide, please. What we learned, and now I'm referring to the textile agreement specifically, is that we really are making a difference. We are now operating 4 years, and what you see is that an enormous development of consciousness within companies on how the supply chain is built up, what are systemic issues that people have to deal with, and also we see an enormous increase of their insight in the supply chain, because according to our agreement, they have to do a thorough due diligence process. They really have to deep dive in the first tier, the second tier, etc. Every year, there are new demands that they have to comply with. And we really see, and we are very happy with that, is that we really have now, if I compare that with 5 years ago when we did the negotiations, and if I look now to the level of commitment and knowledge and consciousness around issues related to the supply chain, we've made a lot of progress. However, making really impact in supply chain within 3 to 5 years is just too short. You need at least 5 to 10 years. And that's why parties at this moment are talking about a second agreement that would start in 2022, when this agreement is finishing next year, 2021. What is important in the end, you can talk about all kinds of thematic issues, but the soft side of the cooperation is crucial. So people should trust each other, and you need to build collaboration, you need to build trust, and that is not a thing that you can do within 3 weeks or 6 weeks, even in a country in the Netherlands where a lot of social dialogue and dialogue between parties is very common. But if you really start deep diving into details, you are very surprised about the little knowledge parties really have from each other. And trust is something that you really need to build. So the content is important of the agreement, but I would say the process facilitation of it. So how do you really do such a process in a very thoughtful and thorough way is also very important. What you often see, and that's the next bullet, is that in these kind of agreements, everybody puts together its individual plan, and then we say, now we have a plan together. No, that is not true. It should be more than just the individual plans. And that's why we use an approach developed in the universities of the United States, which we call the mutual gains approach, where you really say 1 and 1 doesn't add to 2, but adds to 3. Then it is crucial to really support companies in the whole development and implementation of these kind of agreements. We have dedicated staff. We have a secretariat of 8 persons, and we have an independent chair. That's me, who really facilitate, coordinate the whole process. And what we also see is that if you really want to be effective in the long run, if you really want to be impactful, you need to cooperate internationally. And that's why I'm very honored to have this possibility to talk to you, because I think that between like-minded minds, and I consider our countries as a bit as like-minded, it is very, very important that we join forces, and that if we do, for example, a project on living wage in Bangladesh, that we don't do it just with the Dutch brands, but it really becomes a collective effort at national or international level. And that's my last point, and also the transition to my last slide. I think there is a key role for governments to play, not only in the EU, but also in the production countries. And let me explain that to you on my last slide. If you look what systemic issues are in a supply chain, then they are often related to no freedom of association. The wages are too low. Labor inspections don't function. There is corruption, etc. All these issues are related to the domain of the government. It's very nice that all other parties talk about it, but in the end, the government decide about what kind of minimum wage they use in their country. So that's why it's very important to have the government into our agreement. And there are a lot of policies related to the issues that I just mentioned, and I've mentioned here a few. You have policies related to the public procurement, the competition law, trade development, development cooperation, very important in all our countries. And all these policies should be coherent and supportive to the goal. And I'm mentioning now a few examples. Let me mention one that is not very clear on this slide, but we are working now with 8 brands in China in improving the situation in the mills where the fabrics are colored. Well, that is an initiative that we developed together with our Dutch embassy in China, because they have other contacts than we. And through that network and through their contacts, we were able to really realize such a project. A few years ago, we had a big meeting in Pakistan with 8 ministers of labor from Bangladesh, Pakistan, and many other countries, organized by our embassy with the full support of our Minister of Trade and Development. Well, and then, of course, you can talk with these ministers of labor about all different aspects of, for example, living wage or raising minimum wage, etc. Governments also can be a launching customer, so they can really say, hey, this is interesting, we are going to buy, for example, cloth for our staff in a specific company, and we ask our buyers to really include a preference for these kind of products that come from partners from the agreement. And of course, due to the network of embassies and all over the world, they can play a very important role in promoting local dialogues, bringing together parties. I remember a few years ago, I was in Argentina, and this subject is not very popular in Argentina, but the ambassador just invited everybody relevant in the fashion industry to be present, and they were obliged to listen to me for at least 45 minutes and to hear to say about fashion and sustainability. So this convening power is often underestimated, and especially in production countries or countries beyond Europe, we forget that embassies can be very, very strong in convening and bringing people together. And for a last example, and then I will close. You can see that, for example, in the country of Bangladesh, we work with all kinds of projects to improve the situation, but the government is also supporting the improvement of the labor inspection in Bangladesh themselves. Because as long as the labor inspection is too weak in staffing and are not equipped to really do their job, equipped because of many, many reasons, then of course, you can go on with publishing improvement plans, but you need also the input and the support of the local government. And that, I think, was exactly my 12 minutes.
Well, Pierre, thank you so much for such a very brief but so very thorough walkthrough. What I'm really getting out of your presentation, collaboration is absolutely key. However, there needs to be built also trust, and we need to be patient. So obviously, this is a change that's not going to happen overnight. And I really like when you said that we need to learn it's about 1 + 1 = 3. So doing it together. And as probably all of you who are listening right now can tell already based on the brief examples from all over the world, Pierre has so many years experience working for all the different initiatives when it comes to sustainable textiles and fashion industry. So I would say if you want to learn more about Pierre, please definitely go to the nordictalks.org. So it's the site you were also registering through. And over there you can find way more on all our speakers, including Pierre. Pierre, if I may, I would just like to ask you one more question. So you made it very clear that this current agreement is going to sort of expire next year. And after there's going to be a new agreement, what would you say is going to be absolutely crucial to make the next agreement a success and really move forward in terms of creating sustainable fashion industry?
Yes, I think the COVID crisis clearly impacts the way we look at the sector. And I think that there are two things that the organizations or the party of the agreement have expressed. One is we really have to focus much more on impact. So we will maintain due diligence, but impact has to become more important. So that will be the target. And secondly, we have to develop an initiative that is much more international. And how, we don't know yet. Probably a lot of you know there will be due diligence law probably from the EU, and there will be new international developments. We have a Green Deal. So all these kind of developments, plus the post-COVID crisis and how to deal with that, are elements that will influence the negotiations between the parties. But two things are key. We have to go for impact, and we have to go for international focus and cooperation. How? The negotiations will start next month. Yeah, let's see how it goes.
Many thanks. Thank you so much for being with us, Pierre. Much appreciated. All the best, and please, if you can, stay tuned in the background.
Yes, I will
and
do.
talk to you
Thank you.
later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah, so I'm very grateful that Pierre is the one who got a chance to open this webinar and tell us a little bit of insights about how important international collaboration is, and also that this is something that not one individual can do on their own. We really are talking here about a systemic change. It's about the government, the regulations that need to push the change. It's about the companies that need to change. And it's also about the individuals starting to realize that we have to start behaving differently within the consumption than up till now. This is a pretty good line also to the panel discussion we will deep dive into in a few minutes. But before we get there, let's actually explore a little bit together through the poll question that we have prepared for you. Where do you currently stand when it comes to choosing new clothes? So Benjamin, please, if you could launch the poll, and perhaps not necessarily all the questions you would like to see and the answers are listed here, but please just go for the one that the best describes the current situation for you. So the question is, how do you ensure that the clothes you're buying are sustainable? And the options are, I count on brands being responsible if this is how they're positioning themselves. The second option is I check the certification and information on the label, and I do my research. And the last one is I do not specifically check for sustainability when buying new clothes. And I see that numbers are popping in. It's quite amazing to see how many people are at a level to really checking for certifications and doing their research before they buy new items. That's really great to see. And we have almost 2/3 of people who voted. So if you could please just take the time also to cast your vote. Fantastic. And we got results. Yeah, and the majority of people, more than half of the people joining us today, decided to choose the option. I check for certification and information on the label. I do my research. Oh, that tells quite a lot about the audience joining today's webinar. That means that people are already conscious and paying very close attention to how they're consuming when it comes to fashion. Great to see. Thank you. I see that we have quite a lot of people, 1/4 also, counting on brands being responsible if this is how those brands are marketing and positioning themselves. Fair enough. Indeed, that should be absolutely legit if we wouldn't have this thing called greenwashing. And I think it's also absolutely fair just to admit that yeah, there's still a space for improvement when it comes to information, and people do not specifically check for sustainability when buying new clothes. So thank you everyone who participated. And also over here, I would like to say we are going to dive into a conversation on how we can change fashion industry going forward. So everyone who's joining us from all around the world, I would like to invite you here also. Suggest some questions for the panelists, and we will do our best to answer as many as possible. And without further ado, let me introduce you to the 4 people who are going to join the discussion. I would like to start with Josephine Lundqvist. Josephine is representing Fashion Revolution. We're specifically Fashion Revolution Denmark, and Fashion Revolution is a global movement. Josephine is organizing and coordinating the student ambassadors for Fashion Revolution, really supporting the conscious and positive activism. So super happy to have you on board, Josephine. Our next speaker is going to be Evelyn Mora, representing Finland here, despite the fact that Evelyn is actually sitting and dialing in from Paris as we speak. Evelyn is the CEO of Helsinki Fashion Week, and she's really a visionary when it comes to how to make fashion weeks way more sustainable than what we are used to up till now. For instance, the Helsinki Fashion Week was the very first sustainable fashion week done even in 3D way this year, fully utilizing the avatars to really engage people all around the world without having to travel. Then I'm very happy that we're having with us also Gisle Mardell-Mariani. Gisle Mariani-Mardell is the chair and the head of the Norwegian Fashion and Textile Agenda. It's a cluster of all the different designers, brands working with the industry as well, supported by the Innovation Norway. And Gisle has been within the field of fashion for many, many years. He's been also the CEO of the Norwegian Fashion Agenda, really driving it forward and having a lot of initiatives linked to that. Please, if all of you could unmute yourself and also join us with a video, that would be fantastic. And last, but definitely not least, I'm absolutely excited that we have with us also Jenny Rosen, representing the Swedish Fashion Council. And Jenny has a vast experience when it comes to fashion, a real visionary combining technology, design, and a culture, working for this institution to really see how we can further spread the knowledge, insights, inspire, and learn, and how to push the Swedish fashion beyond its borders. So welcome to everyone. Really happy to have you all on board. Hi, Josephine, great to see you.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Absolutely excited to have you. I'm waiting for the others to join us. Evelyn, Gisle, and Jenny, can you also join us, please, by unmuting yourself and sharing your video?
Yes. Hi, Andrea, how are you? Thank you for having
Hi, Evelyn. Hi, great to see you. And I can also see Jenny and Gisela. So great to have four of you in such an important discussion. So as you already heard from Lisa, who introduced the whole webinar, we were already diving through what is it that the companies need to do. So we were looking at the business transformation within fashion with the help of four brands representing Nordics. Then the one we had last week was really focusing on demand-driven change. So what is it that consumers can do, and what are all the different business models? And with you, all four of you being visionaries, a real fashionistas, but looking at everything also from the innovation and sustainability point of view, I would like to open with a very big question. And then, of course, we're not talking single brands, but we're really looking what's happening within the fashion agenda. And the big question is, what do we need to really move towards sustainable fashion from where we are right now? Evelyn, we already see you big on the screen. Would you like to start? What is your point of view on this?
What do we need to change the fashion into a more sustainable one?
Yes.
We need to understand the interconnectivity of fashion with other industries. This is number one. Secondly, we need to come up with methods that enable collaboration between similar sectors. Like, for example, fashion weeks. We need to understand how fashion weeks what kind of model and strategy we can build in a way that fashion weeks can together collaborate without losing their own sort of identity or profits or benefits. Yeah, I think these are the two things. In order to be able to collaborate on an international level, we need to find strategies to collaborate. And actually there was one very similar concept made by Sitra. It's a Finnish government-run organization where they actually have guidelines in how to work in groups. Although we do need to take that further and deeper into actually looking into how, for example, luxury groups can work together, how fast fashion companies can work together to reach their goals. And many times, which I'm very surprised positively and very grateful to be included in this event, in this webinar, is that fashion is underestimated and it's excluded and kind of put in its own box when it comes to the larger image, a bigger picture in terms of tackling climate change. Because fashion is not just the clothing and textile industry. It has an effect to cultures, religions, languages, nationalities. It's a versatile tool to use to tackle challenges.
Thank you so much for highlighting that. Absolutely. And at the same time, it's something everyone can relate to because all of us are wearing clothes, right? Yeah, thanks, Evelyn. Yeah, Jenny, Gisela, Josephine, would you like to also join your point of view, please?
Yeah, I could start. I mean, like from my point of view, or like the Swedish Fashion Council point of view, we need to change everything. We heard we need to change ground values, ethics, social aspects, and also like supply chains. I mean, like the good thing, if we look on a wider perspective on the industry, borders, and countries, as we heard, we actually are available to do that change. And we need to look into like what fashion is today. Fashion is not the same today regarding to digitalization, sustainability. It already moved into digital layers, and we need to also look into that kind of perspective when we look to how we could make a smarter fashion industry. And we need to look into adaptive approach when it comes to all the clothes we already have on our planet and how we could find business models actually make those clothes stay longer on the planet. And also we need to look into a more transformative approach when it comes to the digital layers and connective. And we know like the younger generation is already using fashion from a different perspective. For example, we know that the gaming industry is growing a lot. And we know, for example, Fortnite is selling more clothes than Amazon today. Yeah, I think I stopped there.
Yeah, many thanks for sharing, Jenny. Fantastic. And also, both you and Evelyn are obviously mentioning a lot of innovation that will be required, a lot of digitalization, gamification. Yeah, Gisela, what is your point of view on this topic?
Well, thanks for having me, I should say as well. And I obviously agree with what's been said. I think the biggest challenge when it comes to fashion is that there's a huge mismatch between supply and demand, which means that there's an enormous amount of overproduction to the same extent undervaluing the clothing that we buy. We don't actually wear our clothes more than 4 times on average. So in 2017, for example, we produced 100 billion items of clothing for 7.5 billion people. I think that's where we need to start. We need to look at how can we actually start producing clothing that fits this purpose and not just end up as a surplus phenomenon that becomes a problem rather than an asset. And I think also what Jenny is saying, I agree very much in how we should look at other ways of possessing clothing. I think ownership is on its way out, but that means that brands need to change their value proposition. And that's the hard part at the moment, because we as a culture, as like a global population, we are such consumers. I mean, it's such an integrated part of our identity, but consuming is not the answer, but using is the answer. So we need to come up with sustainable models of both production and consumption, but we need to look at it into a type of circular perspective, where the design processes that will be the platform or the point of departure for a piece of clothing also needs to be taken into account for all the activities that goes through the lifespan of a garment, and to be taken back and then to be able to be recycled, because there's a lot of waste that could have been turned into profit.
You're so right. Many thanks. Josephine, over to you. And actually, we know that you're representing Fashion Revolution and Fashion Revolution Denmark here. It's a movement very well known for activism, and also, as you call it, and I absolutely love it, positive activism. So there have been quite a lot of campaigns really trying to change fashion industry from the bottom up. What is your take on that? What is it that we need to do to change this industry?
Well, yeah, as you say, Fashion Revolution is a movement from the people, right? And from the beginning, transparency has kind of been a core of what we work with. So to change the fashion industry, we think the first step is to push for more transparency. Yeah, the global fashion industry is kind of in itself, very international in its nature. We have super complex supply chains, they are fragmented, and a lot of things are happening behind closed doors. And we don't know what's going on. Not always the brands know what's going on and in which specific place their products has been produced. So we really think that we need to push at first for more transparency, to know in which areas we need to push even harder for change, because if we know where things are going a bit wrong, we can also hold the brands accountable. We can choose to buy products from the companies who are actually doing good. And by holding brands accountable, we can also kind of change this, what today is kind of a destructive system, into a more flourishing industry that both values and cares for its people and the environment.
Thank you. Many thanks. So what I'm hearing from all 4 of you is we obviously need a change. We really need a better match between supply and demand. We obviously need way better transparency to be able to hold companies accountable. And now the big question is, how can we do that? How can we really ensure that the fashion industry, from the company's perspective, can be pushed into a more sustainable direction? So the demand and supply are matching better, transparency is better, and that when brands start claiming something, we can really just count on the fact that if they claim they're sustainable, they really are. So let's get a little bit more practical. How can we really do that? Josephine, feel like starting?
Sure. Yeah, like at Fashion Revolution, we are all about people joining up and teaming up together. So we try to work with this positive activism where we kind of support people to acknowledge their power in this change, because I mean, even if we want it or not, we're all part of the fashion industry. We all wake up every morning, we put on clothes, and every time we do that, we are taking a stand and we are actually telling a story with what we are wearing. So we really try to like make people feel that they have the power. We celebrate and encourage the ones who are already have embarked on this journey of ethical and sustainable fashion. And by putting them in the spotlight, we also inspire other people to kind of follow them and do the same. On the other hand, we don't believe in that we should like point people out or name and shame and negative protesting or even boycotting, because like the challenge is way bigger than one company or one brand. So we all have to team up, as everyone has already mentioned, right? And in the end of the day, even the ones we disagree with in a holistic change has to end up on our side as well, right? So we try to really highlight the positive things to change the less positive things.
Many thanks. So indeed, that's why the combination we're going to hear from bottom up. So that's obviously Josephine representing Fashion Revolution. And then, Jenny, Gisle, and Evelyn, you're representing top down as well. So indeed, from bottom up, we have to obviously encourage the consumers that they need to choose for what they believe in. But how about all those companies? How can we push the industry into changing? What do we need to do that?
I can start and try to answer. It's obviously quite a complex question you're asking there, so I don't think there's a very specific answer. But I think, first of all, we need to diversify it, because I think fashion is a means of expression, whereas clothing is a means of a more practical reason. So fashion is very culturally embedded, and so it's not a technical solution when it comes to fixing that. But there are a lot of ways of consuming fashion, which is not about buying something and throwing it away. And that's, I think, where we are heading. We're heading into an era where we're looking at fashion as a service rather than being a plain product. But I think when it comes to all of the aspects we are discussing today, I think knowledge is key, because when you know something, then you can do something about it. And we've been involved in several research projects where when you have a sort of confirmed truth and a possible solution to something, it's easier to actually then move along and be practical and do something about it. Because I think what we need to do is also look at the sort of measurements of how much pollution, how much water usage, all of the elements that go into the process of creating garments, which is the underlying factor in fashion. And then I think also we have to look at fashion producing companies and consumers as collaborators in this respect, because it's really difficult at the moment for fashion companies who are losing massive amounts of revenue. Only this year, I think worldwide companies are losing something like 30% of their revenue. So they're really struggling. So it's not easy for them to just change their market overnight. This is where we need to work together, consumers and brands, to find a type of market that works for both ways. And I think what's being tested out now, the rental markets, the new ways of ownership, product stewardship, all of these kind of key words that are hot at the moment, they also need to mature. But the problem is that we don't particularly have that time if we're going to align with some of those, let's say, sustainability goals that have been set for the industry to reach within 2030.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very happy you're mentioning actually different business models, because that could really nicely capture the demand without overproduction, right? If more people are utilizing the garment better, we can really nicely extend the life of this garment. What do we need? Like, what type of push for the companies to do more of that, and perhaps a little bit faster? How to motivate them?
No, but I think, like, to catch into Gisle's discussion, and also Josephine, I mean, like, it's also like we need to address the problem. It's a fashion industry problem, so we need to address it there. I mean, like, the consumer, if we look into the generation set, the consumer already there, but we don't have the solutions on the market to be able to meet the consumers. So I think, like, it's really important, like what Gisela said, it's to get like acceleration into the fashion industry, and to get like good initiative on the market to be able also to meet the consumers. I mean, like, there is a reason why we have all this activism connected to fashion industry. It's because it's a topic and people care, and they also look into to find solution that they actually could use. But if we look into the industry until now, there is not so many initiative. Like, we always had to buy fashion before, and what Gisela talked about is a different access to fashion. But then we need to get those initiative out and be able to meet the consumer, to be able to change the behavior connected to you.
Exactly. Yeah, very happy you're saying that, Jenny. Absolutely. So we need to boost this kind of like new initiatives. And I'm just really curious, how can we do that? So indeed, there are already some pilots when it comes to sustainable fashion rental business model. So it's about having access to clothes instead of having to buy them. And what could really be a really nice motivation for more brands to start doing that?
I think, like, in Sweden, we have we work with Swedish fashion talents, and we have a talent working with a new app, and she came up with this app only 3 months ago, and the target group is between 15 to 35, and I mean, like, it already reached 10,000 users, and it's a swap app, so you can swap your clothes with your friends. And it's also like, it's really interesting to see like how quick it can go if you put those kind of models. So it's also like we need to match those new initiative with the brands we already have on the market. And also, like, from a governmental perspective, we need to invest in innovation, because I think, like, this is not a problem in fashion, it's connected to the whole society. And I mean, like, it goes back to, we need to collaborate over borders and industries to make a better future for us all.
Yeah, this app you mentioned, Jenny, sounds fantastic. Can you perhaps share also the name of the app?
Yeah, the name is Pop Swap. So you should check
Swap.
it out. Pop Swap, yeah.
Many thanks, many thanks. Evelyn, how about you? What do you think we need to nudge the fashion industry into the right direction?
I think that we should connect fashion to the other industries. What we realized in 2018 Eco-Village concept was that what leads the consumer to buy or dress in a certain way, to express themselves, is very much connected to their lifestyle as a whole. So it's not just how I look, but how I live and how I travel, how I work, and so forth. So it is a more complex aspect to think about. And in terms of consumers, I think what we really need to, what we've done for many years is underestimating consumers. We're talking about directing them and leading them. But the thing is that actually, if you look at trends or movements, it's very much starts with consumers. Now the brands are trying to keep up with the consumers. And I do agree what Gisle said about diversifying. I think that in the end, it comes down to communication, and then being able to diversify that information to the specific age groups, and not just create one big message and push it out there. another thing, what I think Gisela said again is fashion as a service. I think that Jenny's app is amazing, and it's something that is really emerging right now. However, I see that we are moving towards fashion as a service, in fact, in a way where the consumer decides what that service is. So we not necessarily anymore produce collections per seasons, but we produce a product that can serve a purpose in that consumer's life. And instead of trying to direct the consumer groups, rather inspiring them to use sort of the sustainable mindset for them to act, you know, to inspire opportunities and such. But in the end, I think the industry will change eventually, led by the consumers themselves. And this sort of race where companies and industries are chasing the consumers and trying to adapt to the changing environments, also obviously in this special occasions like, you know, the pandemics, I think how we can inspire the brands to adapt new business models is to invest in research and not see research as as an obligation, but as a source of information that can model and can, you know, help businesses to build business models that can actually work. And we just need much more testing and define innovation as testing, to have projects where we would test several business models and learn from, you know, the parts where it fails and understand why, and try to adapt to that.
Fantastic. I hope it's just nice to mention that exactly those different business models. In the previous webinar, we had a couple of those business models and a specific brands that are already busy with that. So super happy to hear that this is perfectly in a line. And also, all four of you are working for organizations very, very hard working on the change and really pushing the boundaries of the fashion industry towards better, more fair, more sustainable. So Evelyn, how about you? What is the role of the Helsinki Fashion Week in doing this, for instance?
I think we defined, someone said one day that Helsinki Fashion Week is like a trampoline. And I got really inspired by that. And I think what we are doing is we are testing things. We are a non-profit organization, and we do not, we're not run or you know, owned by commercial entities. So we are free to create different kinds of concepts each season that can adapt to that specific time. So I think testing things and bringing together very practically interdisciplinary actors to learn from each other and test out different ideas and concepts. This is, I think, is the biggest impact. For instance, we launched this designer residency concept this season, and where we connected 3D designers and traditional designers to co-create a look. Many aspects came out in terms of being flexible, in terms of creativity, understanding the point of view of the other discipline, the professional that is representing the other discipline. It really gave a lot of participants very new informations and visions, and you know, it created a co-learning hub, which a lot of the participants took away a lot of new information and perspective. And frankly, the results were fantastic. So I think a co-learning, interdisciplinary, hands-on collaboration, and then of course sharing those results transparently.
Mm-hmm. Is there one result you could share with us that you thought was really like one of the key ones?
Yeah, actually today we just, we're releasing our digital sustainability report. And what actually shocked me was that we built the eco-village concept in 2018. And in fact, it was less sustainable than our digital village. And it was due to the 20% of the visitors that contributed 99% of the emissions of the edition because of the traveling.
Such a great point. Yeah.
And
yeah.
Basically, one visitor's CO2 footprint on Eco-Village was over 130 kilograms. In Digital Village, it was less than 1. So, but we did reach 8,000 people physically in Digital Village and over 500,000 guests in the Digital Village. So it was nice to have sort of concrete results, and we are sharing the entire report publicly.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing this report and learning more from it. And also, I would like to ask you now, Gisela, can you tell us a little bit more about your organization? And you're also working closely with Innovation Norway. How are you contributing to the sustainable fashion industry?
Sure. Well, sustainability is at the center, it's the core of everything that we're doing, because driving that change is driving everything, is where the market will head, is where our society is heading. So obviously that's the main driver. And to what Jenny was saying earlier, I think also now the government is channeling a lot of funding into the developments, because first of all, there's obviously the overarching goals from the UN, and we have, Norway as a country have obliged to meet those, but also in this COVID situation, a lot of companies are struggling. And so they are using funding to drive innovation in companies as a means to develop the industry further, and to actually, rather than just giving out help, also giving them an initiative to change and use this opportunity as a factor of change. And we're an industry cluster, and industry clusters are based on collaboration. And the theoretical framework is basically companies, academia, education, finance, working together with governments. And in this respect, it's all to do with preparing companies for change and making sure that they get the tools and that they get the right support and financial support that they need in this. And the way that we have developed our project is looking at the circular value chain and defining 3 main areas, focus areas, that we particularly want to encourage companies to drive innovation. So design and manufacturing, obviously, it's all to do with the new design possibilities and visualizations, 3D design, and also the fact that you can work much longer with digital garments, and you can create a more precise on-demand type of business model proposition, which also means that companies will avoid inventory. There is a lot of waste reduction when it comes to materials and that. And also I think there's a big possibilities for re-industrializing when it comes to added manufacturing technologies. The second one is obviously then trade and consumption, which is a very important part when it comes to understanding how business models will change according to change in consumer behavior, but also according to sort of new laws coming out of the EU, types like the extended producer responsibilities, where companies have to apply. In Norway, that means that within 2025, you won't actually be able to throw textiles in your home garbage. It needs to be structured some other way. That's a big area that companies also need to understand how to drive innovation. And then the third one is in the huge possibilities in reuse and recycling. I think it's expected that the resale economy is going to be twice as big as fast fashion within 2029, which is quite an opportunity for companies. But we need to find new ways then of dealing with this, because we need better systems for both collecting, for treating, and understanding how you can repurpose used clothing. And also, obviously, the other aspect of that is how can we recycle, which again goes back to the design process, which goes into the trade and industry, and hence you have that circular economy business model.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. And indeed, I really like that you highlighted the role of regulators, you highlighted quite some initiatives and the goals that we're already working towards. So yeah, there's definitely quite a lot of work, and thank you so much for that, Gisle. Jenny, how about Swedish Fashion Council? What is the main goal, and what are perhaps even like some specific projects you could share with us?
I mean, like the Swedish Fashion Council aim is to promote, educate, and innovate the Swedish fashion industry to become competitive in all areas, and of course sustainable. And I mean, like Sweden in general is one of the most innovative countries in the world, and we have companies like Spotify, IKEA, and iSettle that's really like have been driving this agenda. So that really helps out actually to try to create a new vision for fashion. And it's also like really known, I think from all of you, that we have Greta Thunberg, who have been a great thought leader connected to like the fashion industry, and also been like a front page person on all the fashion magazines in the whole world. We have H&M, who have leading the way since early 2000 about the sustainability work, and also was scoring as #1 of the Transparency Index. They scored over 70%, and I think like more than 50% who was in the study actually scored under 20%. So when we look into Sweden as a country, we are really ahead when it comes to sustainability and innovation. And when it comes to projects that we work on, I think there is a governmental national platform that's really important, that it's for small and medium-sized companies, that we measure the whole sustainability process. And it's a 5-year project, and it's driven by the Swedish School of Textile. And I think that's quite impressive, the whole project. And when it comes to other projects we do, as I mentioned before, is the talent program. I think it's really important for us all to drive new talent, new business models, and new thought leaders into the market who actually could drive the change when it comes to the future of fashion industry.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic that you're mentioning education and raising the awareness and pushing it forward through the new generations. Yeah, many thanks, Jenny. And right now I'm looking at you, Josephine, as well. So what would you say, like, how can Fashion Revolution push the fashion industry to change?
Well, I think Fashion Revolution, we try to make sustainable choices easier for the consumer. So I think we are all sometimes overwhelmed about what is actually a sustainable and ethical choice when buying products, right? I often get the question like, hey, Josephine, I know the fashion industry is a very polluting industry, and often garment workers are not treated right. I want to contribute to a change, but I don't know what to do. Where do I buy? How do I have an impact on a company? And this is really where Fashion Revolution comes in, because if you go online on our website, you find a lot of different tools and resources that are free to use for everyone. So you find all these like how-to guides. You can learn how to mend your sweater. You can learn how to create a swap shop or a clothing swap. And you can also learn how to participate in the Who Made My Clothes campaign. That is really the core of what we do. And you also find like standardized email and tweet forms where you can only insert like your name or the company's name and send it off. And then you have contributed to pushing for a more transparent industry, because you have asked who made my clothes and how are the conditions that they are made under, right? So I think that what we do is really to help people make simple changes in their everyday lives that are actually super easy and quite small, but they can have a really big impact.
Many thanks. And for those who might not know yet, what is the initiative Who Made My Clothes? Can you tell us a little bit more? How does that work in practice?
Yes. So it's mostly going on in April, which is the month of when the Rana Plaza accident happened. So every year during the anniversary of this date, and we celebrate a whole, not celebrate is the wrong word, but we dedicate a week to really highlight the garment workers and what is going on in the industry in terms of workers' rights. And during this week, we have this campaign, which is Who Made My Clothes, where people, they turn their shirts inside out and show the label and tag the brand, and really like pushes to ask for who made my clothes then. We also now have a hashtag saying what's in my clothes. And I think last year there were around 184,000 posts, or like this year it was 184,000 posts made with this hashtag. And I think that like in 1 month, and I think that is really, really cool and shows that people are really dedicated to change what's going on.
So it's an initiative that anyone can join through their social media, asking all the different brands who made my clothes and what's in my clothes.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, so obviously all of you are working hard on changing the fashion industry, and obviously there's quite a lot to do, and I really wish we would have more time to dive into more details. How can we do that? I'm the lucky one who got a chance to talk to every single one also individually, and we were diving through all the different aspects, such as like how do we tackle all the different generations? How do we indeed, Evelyn, you pointed it out, focus on different categories and different segments in a different way, because probably different ways of engagement will work for different generations. And also, Gisela, with you, we were exploring what is circular economy, how to do that. Jenny, you really looking at the fashion industry as something that's driving our life. It's connected to design, to culture, to technology and innovation. So there is way more we could discuss here. However, I thought it might be also interesting just to pick up very quickly a couple of the insights or the answers or questions that are coming from our audience. And first, and a really big one, so if you could very briefly touch on this topic at least, is what is the aspect of all those agreements and collaborations, and knowing that include also a lot of members with problematic backgrounds? How do we believe what is really sustainable and what's not? So I do believe this is a question that has a lot to do with greenwashing. How can we avoid? And again, unfortunately, we don't have time to dive into that. But if one of you would like to pick it up, or a few of you to provide high-level insight, that'll be fantastic.
I can jump onto that because I know that there is organizations that are specifically targeting H&M in the sustainability activism aspect. And then it's funny that I see this video, and then there is an advert of H&M advertising, literally using every single different way of being sustainable, whether using recycle this material and doing, you know, improving old clothing. So they are really, really putting effort. They are really, really putting effort. It's a fact. Yet the public opinion remains negative. So the point is, again, that we need to find models and ways to make these activists and organizations in general and these companies to communicate and collaborate. And once we find those methods, we can start communication and collaboration, because as much as activism is very important and creates a lot of awareness, shares a lot of information, we need to, I'm personally a person that wants to see the impact and the results concretely. So we need to find ways to communicate and actually take this feedback and criticism to the next level and create situations and models where we are able to collaborate in an interdisciplinary way.
Yeah, many thanks for that, Evelyn. Okay, let me then also move to the next question from the audience, and that has to do with digitalization and innovation. So we were talking about all those different tools. I think, Jenny, you even mentioned gamification over there. How can we really utilize it for a more sustainable and inclusive fashion?
I think like the elephant in the room is the volume production, as Gisela mentioned before. And I mean, like to be able to, I think like this is also a generation question, because I mean, like, what is fashion really only physical clothes today? Fashion could be on so many different platforms and also like as a digital tool. And as Evelyn mentioned, as the report, she could decrease a lot of the total impact. So I mean, like if we could move a few of the physical clothes into the digital sphere, it could have an impact on the total industry.
Many thanks. Yeah, just would you, Evelyn, please?
May I add a quick comment on that?
Sure, of course.
I agree totally with Jenny, and I would just add that right now that we're emerging more and more to the digital sort of fashion industry, we take our ways of doing things in the real fashion industry with us. So what we need to realize and remember is that right now the digital fashion is created by people, by humans, but unfortunately already in the past few months we can see a lot of exploitation and the bigger companies adapting the ways how they produce physical collections into the digital world. So we have to be careful in actually regulating already the fashion industry in a way and trying to not adapt or inherit the negative sort of ways of the real life fashion industry into the digital world.
Many thanks. I'm wondering, Gisela, whether you would like to also say something.
Sure. I think what innovation is all about is that it doesn't necessarily come from reproducing the past, as Evelyn was saying. However, looking to examples like Tesla, who revolutionized the car industry, coming from a completely other type of industry and affecting it heavily. So the way that technology is now driving fashion, it might not be the way that we see it as it is today. To what Jenny was saying as well, fashion is self-expression, so it might take many, many forms, and some of these would be digital. However, clothing, if we talk about clothing, is still a physical state, and I think technology can solve problems if it comes to avoiding mass and volume production that doesn't actually fit the consumer's want, because what it does is that it eliminates the process of planning. So let's say you would plan a collection 6 months ahead and then you miss the trend, and then all your inventory is basically just stuck and you can't do anything about it. Whereas if you move into a pull process where the consumers actually, the needs of the consumer is taken into account, and so you produce on demand, then you will eliminate hopefully a big part of that overproduction. So technology can solve a lot of issues, and digitization can solve and be a great way of avoiding overproduction. But I think culturally, we need to look at ourselves in a different way.
Many thanks, Gisela. Yeah, great. Thank you all for fantastic insights. I have to say I've learned a lot. I do believe our audience as well. And again, unfortunately, we had very limited time to dive through all the different aspects, but please go to nordictalks.org. Check out the speakers, check out their profiles. So I know, Evelyn, you, for instance, you wrote so many articles, and there were so many articles written about you and about all of you. So please, this is another source where you can find way more information on their thoughts and way of thinking. Many thanks. And yeah, fantastic to have you. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Obviously, talking about sustainable fashion as a systemic change, it's a very complex topic. Hence, also the questions are very complex. We could utilize the whole webinar just focusing on digital fashion, just focusing on circular economy business models, only focusing on what we can do from bottom up and what are the practical ways how to engage consumers. However, we at least wanted to give you an idea that there are so many things happening in the background. And talking about international collaboration, talking about regulations, we're beyond delighted that indeed the 4 Nordic ambassadors accepted our invitations. And despite the fact that there is a lot going on, and again, we could spend way more time diving through all the different initiatives, it's absolutely fantastic that they agreed to share with us at least the highlights. How are their countries involved? So I would like to invite as the first one the ambassador of the Denmark, Mr. Jens Otto Horslund. Jens Otto, can you hear us?
Hi. How are
Hi.
you? Yeah, good to see you.
Great to see you. Very nice to see you. Representing Denmark, can you please tell us how is Denmark involved in pushing the fashion industry forward?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for being a fantastic moderator, and also the Nordic embassies and the Nordic Chambers of Commerce to set this up. This is very interesting, and all the previous speakers have really given some very valuable insights. Thank you very much. We are very focused on this also in the Netherlands, because the Netherlands is the 3rd biggest export market in fashion and design for Denmark. And consumers, both in our own country and in the Netherlands, they are increasingly conscious about sustainability. And therefore, the Danish government has picked up the signals, and we have some initiatives. And I will mention some of them. The first one is that EU requires all member states to set up a system for the separate collection of textiles by 2025. We want to be the front runner, and we are going to set up our system 3 years before in 2022. Now, second, also the Danish government and business community have established climate partnerships, and one of them regarding trade is working on very ambitious goals for fashion and textiles. Basically, we seek to become a pioneer country, for example, regarding certification and labeling and less and more efficient transport of clothes and textiles. Third, the Copenhagen Fashion Summit and the Global Fashion Agenda gathers top managers, experts, opinion leaders from all over the world, debating sustainability in the fashion industry. These gatherings are the largest of its kind internationally. Fourth, we also have a lifestyle design cluster. It runs a project called Green Circular Transformation. And basically, the idea is to make Danish fashion companies more focused on sustainability and a circular economy. And fifth, a selling group, which is Bijenkorf plus a lot of supermarkets. They have set up an award to motivate upcoming and existing fashion brands to give high priority to sustainability on materials, working conditions, CO2 footprints, etc. The last one is that one of the biggest, if not the biggest, fashion show in Northern Europe, the Copenhagen Fashion Week, has ambitious plans for sustainability, setting, among other things, strict requirements for brands that exhibit at the Fashion Week, and also have focus on its own activities on sustainable brands. So it's a challenge to transform an industry. It takes time. However, increased focus on sustainable fashion will not only contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals by the United Nations, it would also benefit the companies themselves. Thank you, though.
Bedankt. Many thanks, Jens Otto. Thank you so much for sharing all those initiatives. It's great to see that Denmark has fashion embedded into the overall agenda on the national level. Many thanks for sharing. And right now, let's move to Finland. And I would like to invite Ambassador Päivi Kaukoranta to join us. And Päivi, also the question to you is, what kind of sustainable fashion initiatives or policy agreements has Finland in place to work on a sustainable fashion agenda?
Thank you very much, and thank all the speakers of today. And in the interest of time, I would also just give you a couple of concrete examples of Finnish initiatives and programs. In Finland, there are numerous ongoing research projects for developing wood-based fibers for the use of the textile industry. The production process of wood-based biomass requires much less water than cotton, and if the current harvesting surplus in Finland were transferred to fibers, it could replace 20% of the cotton in the world. Of course, this is theoretical, but just to give you an idea of the scale. We believe that in the future, wood fibers can be used to replace cotton and synthetic fibers in clothes and interior materials. I think wood would look good on you. For several years, we have had also a so-called Caterpillar track project that aims for building business from circular economy of textiles, better material efficiency and longer product life, as well as business related to textile recycling. Consumer research in the second phase of the project includes a quantitative consumer survey in Finland and a qualitative consumer survey in Germany, Sweden and the Netherlands. And according to it, consumers were in favor of improving collection possibilities for the end-of-life textiles. And in accordance with the Finnish government program, it has now been proposed that Finland will set up a separate collection of textile waste by 2023. So that would be 2 years faster than required by the EU's Waste Framework Directive. And lastly, I would just say that Finnish fashion is known for its unique and bold design, spiced with some Nordic oddity and play. Finnish textile companies are typically SMEs that invest in design and quality. That may not bring them instant winning tickets, but they may bring sustainability that we are all aiming at. Thank you.
Super. Many thanks, Ambassador Kaukoranta, for all those highlights. And I just can't help it. I have to highlight this company creating new fibers based on wood. I'm very happy to share that one of them is definitely Spinnova. And also Spinnova was taking part in our first webinar. So very happy we got a chance to ask them at least like a few questions on how they do what they do. Many thanks for sharing. And from Finland, let's move straight away to Sweden. And I would like to invite Ambassador Annika Markovic to join us. And yeah, Annika, the question to you is also, what is Sweden going to contribute towards sustainable fashion agenda?
Hello, Andrea, and good afternoon, everyone. And let me start by saying that I'm super happy having listened to this seminar and all the other seminars, the two that we have had previously, and that we are continuing this successful cooperation between the Nordic embassies and the Nordic Chambers of Commerce, together with you, Andrea, to organize the Nordic Talks. This time we are doing it virtually. We had hoped to have at least one as a physical encounter, but because of the corona pandemic, it's not possible. But the Nordic Talks is really an important platform for strengthening our Nordic brand in the Netherlands. And this is a brand that builds on our common values on sustainability, on innovation and equality. And I think that we have heard examples of these three common values today. So for Sweden, climate change is really one of the most urgent issues for the future and should be on the top of the global agenda. So having listened to all the three Nordic Talk webinars, I think one thing is clear to me. We need to live more sustainably also with regards to how we dress and how we decorate. And we have a choice, at least we who live in the developed world. So to help more people make that sustainable fashion choice, we need brave brands. We need progressive government policies as well as conscious consumers. We need them as front runners, we need them as influencers like you, and we need role models. Sweden has international giants in the fashion world and the textile industry, and some have been mentioned today like H&M and IKEA, but we also have other brands like Philippa K, Acne and Rodibier, just to mention a few. And Sweden believes that we need open trade as an important driver for green innovation and smart solutions and more efficient use of resources. Because through trade, we create growth, and therefore also opportunities for ambitious climate measures. The fashion sector is important also to the global trade system, and it needs to become part of the circular economy where textiles live longer and dangerous chemicals are being phased out. So to create this kind of system change and to break the negative trend, Sweden's ambition is to build a strong and long-term collaboration between business sector, the public sector and academia. And I think the word collaboration has been mentioned by all the speakers today as something really important to move this agenda forward. So the Swedish government therefore launched a platform in 2018 together with Borås University in the southern part of Sweden, dedicated to promoting collaboration and efforts for sustainable development in the textile area. And the Swedish government has financed this platform with €1 million per year until 2023. And it will promote sustainable business models and function as a bridge between research and application. And this will strengthen competitiveness based on increased collaboration between the universities and the business and society at large. So the choice that I talked about earlier is, not to go for the cheapest and very often the dirtiest alternative. But in the long run, Sweden is convinced that the climate-friendly goods are the most competitive ones. It's through the production and export of sustainable products that companies can make the greatest environmental benefit and at the same time strengthening their position on the world market. We strongly believe that sustainable business also means increased competitiveness. So being sustainable is the only choice we must make, and we must do it in collaborating with each other. And that's why it was so good to have this discussion today. And I'm really happy to have been part of it. So thank you.
Thank you so much for contributing and sharing so many insights with us. Many thanks, Annika. And definitely not last and least, I would like to invite to join what is happening in the field of Norway when it comes to fair and sustainable fashion, Deputy Ambassador Ine Maring. Ine, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank
and
you.
Just to echo my Nordic colleagues on thanking you, the speakers and the chambers for making this webinars possible on sustainable fashion. So to pick up on the title of this webinar, what do we know? We know that Norway is only 2.4% circular. That comes from the recently published Circularity Gap report. So we know we have a long way to go, and we also know that there is lots of opportunities. So what do we stand for? The Norwegian strategy on circular economy is due later this year. And when presenting the study, a study on the scope of action within circularity, earlier this month, our Minister of Climate and Environment, Mr. Rotevatn, stated that the Norwegian ambition is to be a pioneer, create value and seize possibilities. So allow me to mention 3 specific examples, also keeping to the timeline, of what we stand for. Number 1, raising transparency. The Norwegian Ethics Information Committee recommended in November that businesses by law should be required to disclose information to consumers and organizations about production sites used in manufacturing, responsible business conduct, and supply chain management. On number 2, spotlighting synergies. Some industries can actually trigger potential for circularity in other industries. My Finnish colleagues mentioned one. From the Norwegian side, we have a Norwegian company, No Fear, that has developed a system for large-scale collection of plastic fishing nets and ropes from the ocean. And this plastic litter is recycled and used to manufacture, among other, Econil. That's a strong nylon yarn that is used, among other, by global luxury brands. So, and as you may know, one of Norway's main focus areas are clean oceans, the UN Sustainable Development Goal number 14. And then the third one, and to take up the glow on supply chain, decent and sustainable working conditions are a criteria for investments made by the Norwegian Oil Fund, one of the world's largest investment funds, but also as a criteria for the Norwegian development assistance. Specific example on this is that in June, the Norwegian Oil Fund and UNICEF launched a practical guide on children's rights in garment and footwear supply chain. And the aim is to integrate children's rights into sustainable and responsible sourcing frameworks. So to round up, Norway is committed to circularity and sustainable fashion. We want to be a voice of change, and we're strongly motivated by the many opportunities, but also, not at least, the inspirational cooperation with Nordic and Dutch partners like this webinar. Thank you, Andrea.
Many thanks, Ina, for sharing all the different innovation examples, and also great to see that Norway is definitely on the right path when it comes to making fashion industry more sustainable. And hereby, I would just like to say big thank you to everyone who was with us through every single webinar or who got a chance to join just one. I would like to highlight that every single webinar, as per Good News, has been recorded and hence at the website of the Nordic Talks. You got a chance to rewatch the ones that you might have missed. And without further ado, I would like to also thank all the participants for providing feedback for the previous webinars. And we will be again launching also a QR code. And we would like to ask you for remarks, how we can improve, or if you liked something, what specifically did you like, so we can make sure that we will keep on doing that again. And that would be big thank you, goodbye, and enjoy the rest of the week. And let's make sustainable fashion a great choice for all of us. Back to you, Lisa. Many thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Andrea. Thank you again for your for doing a great job leading this Nordic Talks webinar. I was personally triggered by what Gisle said about this mismatch between supply and demand, and that on average we wear our clothes only 4 times. I believe we can do better than that. Actually, we must do better than that. So this was my personal note. So I would like to thank you, all the speakers, for today's webinar, and especially a warm thank you to our Nordic ambassadors for joining this this last webinar on sustainable fashion. You will find, as Andrea said, the 3 webinars on our website, www.nordictalks.org. There you will also find information about the coming up on our new activities as Nordic Talks, and so please take a look at the website. Before I close this meeting, I would like you to know that there will be a survey. Just when the meeting is closed, there will pop up a little survey. Please take your time to fill it in and give you our feedback on how we can improve the Nordic Talks. That information is very valuable to us. So thank you very much, and see you at the following Nordic Talks. Bye-bye.